All right, welcome back to Unanimous Decision Podcast. This is your fourth episode of Dope Talk. It is the interview series I rolled out this year to kind of stretch the old podcasting wings. I figured out that I had a lot of very interesting people in my life, and while my powers are just talking, I can use these powers to tell you about their powers, which are generally more exciting. Today, we've got on the line a man whose real first name I won't say here because that's how I've always known him. Roe Hartrampf is an actor based out of LA. I think I've been friends with Roe and his family since 1990. Did you guys do St. James?
Say that again? What's that?
Did you guys do St. James for preschool?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Okay, so before 1990. That's actually really creepy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, he has been a friend of mine for most of my life. He was my little brother's best friend growing up. They did everything together. And now they're both in LA chasing their creative dreams, and I call and talk to them about it. Ro, man, how's it going?
It's going great, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. It's been really good to see you. Randomly, Ro was in town this week doing a class at our alma mater, kind of letting some of the young acting students see his chops and kind of test the waters on this teaching thing. How was that experience?
It was amazing, man. It's something that I'm really interested in doing, and I know I've had so many teachers that have influenced me, from the time I was in high school all the way to now. I've got some really great teachers out in LA, and it's exciting to watch those like sort of mind-blowing moments happen for somebody else, and it's fun to be responsible for that. So it was really great.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool. Really cool you got to do that. I do have an actual question that I didn't actually write down or plan for. I just looked at the men's ensemble roster from that year's class. You're
Oh,
obviously doing the acting thing. Matt's obviously singing in LA. And Lawson Anderson's like traveling the world singing opera. Was there something in the
I
water in
know.
the class of '05?
I think so. Also, like our football team, both in eighth grade and senior year, was undefeated all year. So we had some pretty good things going on, if I do say so
Oh, yeah, I
myself.
keep forgetting you're a Gordon Beckham. He's in your class.
Yeah, yeah, professional baseball player Gordon Beckham, man.
So the class of '03, looking a little bit paltry in comparison, but we
Those are your
uh,
words, not mine.
yes, always. The self-deprecating is very important to this podcast. It's the glue that holds it all together.
Yeah.
Um, well, I did want to ask you acting. So, like I said, I've known you most of our lives. What was the first beginning of the acting bug? Because when you say Roe Hartrampf, see, I almost slipped and did it. When you say Roe Hartrampf to me, I always think of you and Matt and like Thomas Davis singing in our house.
Yeah, yeah. It all started, man. Like when I was a little kid, I was really rambunctious, which you might recall, hyperactive, if you will.
Those are fair.
Still remember your dad screaming at us during one of Matt's birthday parties as one of the most terrifying moments of my life for being too rowdy.
Yes.
But I was being really hyperactive as a kid, and so my parents put me in the church choir at the church where we were going. And instead of punishing me, the choir teacher decided that she should put me on stage. And when I was on stage breaking the rules and like, doing a little dance or whatever it was, people would laugh instead of putting me in the corner. And so I liked that and wanted to stick with it. And then luckily Atlanta had a really strong community theater scene. So I was able to start working professionally when I was like 10 years old. I started doing community theater, and then the regional production of Christmas Carol they do every year at the Alliance Theater in town. So I was able to understand from a really young age that acting is not just a hobby; it's an amazing hobby, but it can also be a way to make money.
That's super cool. I think I intellectually knew the thing about the alliance, but I don't think I called upon that for this interview. And it's so weird because at the same time you were doing that, Matt and I were doing like the improv stuff, and he and I were doing the movie thing. It's so
Yeah,
weird that that the purest of the one of us who had the purest roots in the art actually stuck with it.
yeah, exactly. Didn't one of you guys get killed by a mule in that movie?
I got kicked by a mule in Miss Evers Boys, and I died on a table, or
Yeah.
it saved me. And yeah, it's
Oh, they saved you.
but it
Right.
did save me. It won a bunch of awards, and I got nothing from that, but that's always important. I'm still waiting on my
I mean, look
hardware.
at
I
you now,
really am. But no, it's interesting because we see kids, and I think it's important that we even verbalize it here, that the support of your parents and kind of the community who saw like, this is a kid who is, I'll say it, annoying as hell. But we've got to find a way
Oh
to
yeah,
channel that annoying energy. And it wasn't about like making you stop being who you were. It was about finding a way to funnel that into a productive place.
exactly. I think about that all the time, like, and try to be conscious of that in myself, like going into teaching and then eventually having kids, is trying to listen to young people and understand from their perspective how they see the world, and what are the bright spots and what are the dark spots, and how do you push them in the positive direction rather than the negative direction. But I'm really lucky that I had people in my life who were supportive and willing to drive me to the ends of Atlanta for weird auditions.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, so you left, you finished up high school, you decided to go to college,
Yeah.
and just like my little brother, you end up at NYU because I will always continue to, or join somehow inexorably. And you end up studying acting there. So tell us about your NYU experience,
Yeah.
because while we were both in the city at the same time, we didn't exactly run in the same circles.
Not quite. Yeah, I remember going to a party
I was
at
hoping this would
Columbia
come
with
up.
your college frat, and literally you and one other member of your team walking down the sidewalk would block the sun. You guys were just the largest group of people I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, slightly different college experiences, but it was amazing. You know, it was there are positives and negatives about any school experience, right? But I think the things that I got out of NYU were really the network of people, like being able to come to the city that was the center of the theater world as an 18-year-old and not have to move there as a 21-year-old after school. You know, I was able to get in 4 years of networking ahead of the rest of my age group, was really beneficial. And I was able to sign with the manager before I finished college. So I was already auditioning for theater and film and TV before I was done with college.
Right.
And that I felt like gave me a leg up. And there were some opportunities that I got right away that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And then a lot of the people that I met at NYU are still people that I work with today.
Right.
And there really are like the next generation of like movers and shakers in theater specifically.
That's super cool. And you brought up a really good point about having built those connections and that rapport in your 4 years. I always kind of posited myself as like, if you were one of, as one of Matt's close friends, I view you almost as one of my little brothers. And
Yeah.
I watch pretty much everything you do because I'm insanely proud of you. But and I'm not just saying this because of who I am. You're an incredibly talented actor, but do you think you had that extra leg up because of the connections? Was it as you got deeper into it, is it more of a who you know than a what you know?
It's interesting. Yeah, I do think it is about who you know. I mean, I know that's such a played out thing to say, but I think the thing about theater school is if you've got talent going in, you're going to have talent coming out, but it's really about what you put into it. You know, if you're just sort of phoning it in class, and if you're just there to have a good time, you might not be able to push it to the level that you want to be at or that you dream of being at.
Right.
So I think it is, and if you're not aware of making those connections and holding on to those connections. So like I, through a connection, it said that word connection like 7 times, but through a buddy, I was able to meet his manager when we were juniors or even sophomores. And then I still had to bug them. I had to write them an email every 6 months to let them know what I was up to let them know that I was going to be in a play in the summer. They should come see, you know, this and that. I had to hustle still. It wasn't just like, oh, we like this kid, let's give him a shot. I had to really put some work in. But I think talent goes a long way, but then it's also about the people that are sort of co-signing you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think in the theater scene, especially like where you went to college does play a part. And there are a lot of schools out there that are really like well known, and we all know like the Juilliards and, you know, the sort of Yale grad schools and stuff like that you hear about. But in the musical theater community, there's schools that are just funnels, you know, like straight to Broadway almost. And So a lot of casting directors know the kids who are next up while they're still in school. So there's definitely a lot to be said for where you go to school.
Well, I'm glad you touched on the theater background. Like you said, you got your start in the Alliance Theater, and obviously you worked a lot of theater in New York. I've actually wondered this, and I've talked to friends who are in different kind of. I have a couple of friends who do like very much independent professional wrestling, and I always joke that it's the last form of Shakespearean theater in the round, and that it's an immediate, because you get the immediate reaction from the audience. You know exactly where you are and how much emotion is invested, and how much you've got them. Do you having transitioned? I mean, we're gonna get to it later, but you're on television, you're in movies now. Do you miss that immediate satisfaction from a live audience?
I do, man. It's really funny that that was the weirdest transition for me. Like when you have an emotional scene and you sort of put everything you have into it, you get sort of spoiled in theater because you'll get the applause at the end, or you'll get even the stage door experience, like being able to go out for drinks or like say hello to people who saw the show.
Right.
Immediately after finishing and having them say like, oh, we loved it when this happened. Oh, that happened, blah, blah, blah. But when you're on set, and also in my position as typically a guest star, I'm coming in for 1 or 2 days on a job that's been running for multiple seasons.
Right.
So the guys who are working on this show, it's just like their day job.
And
they want to get home.
You're almost like a plug and play. Like, hey, new guy, you're going to be here for this part. Say your line, hit your mark, and let's get out of here.
Yeah, literally. Like when I was on Blue Bloods, Donnie Wahlberg, well, I shouldn't name names, but there was an actor on the show who played a cop.
I'm really glad you backed that one up there.
Yeah, back that one up. We'll just cross that out. They have a very specific way of working on that show. And they, me coming out of school and coming out of the theater community, I always was expecting a lot more camaraderie and a lot more like team effort, but it's very much like everybody's got their way of working, and they see a million of me every week. They got a new villain every time they go to work, so it's just a different thing, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It was just definitely something I had to adjust to.
I think that's also different on different sets. I know Kevin Smith always speaks very glowingly of his time when he gets to direct the CW shows, but he does say that it feels he gets the director credit, but it's a machine. He's like, I just kind of make some suggestions. Right. They're like, here's how we usually shoot this. And he's like, well, let's do that then.
Yeah.
And so he said that it's when you work on those kind of situations, especially coming in from a film or theater background, it can be a little jarring.
Oh, totally, man. And especially a show like the CW shows, or like, an NCIS or a Blue Bloods or something like that. The guys who are working behind the camera are like the hardest working people in show business. They're laying down the cable, they're hanging the lights, all the stuff that goes into it. Those guys especially are on a very strict union schedule. Mm-hmm. So when they hit a certain time, they got to catch their train back to wherever they live with their families and spend time with their kids.
Yeah.
So when a new actor or a new director comes on set and is like, hey man, like, what if we tried this angle? And they're like, well, that's going to add like 2 hours to our day. So if you really want to go for that, it's going to cost you X amount of overtime, but we'd rather get home to our kids,
Yeah.
Which I think is something that you don't think about when you're in theater school and, rolling on the floor in your pajamas.
Well, I do. Before we get into your latest product, I want to talk about some of the theater stuff, because I think it's interesting that so many people who we see on our televisions and I always say that television is the most intimate thing, because you're literally inviting these people into your home, and sometimes on a weekly basis. Before we get to the theater, before we get out of the theater, is there a single high point for you in theater?
Yeah, man, it's got to be a show that I did in 2011 that was called Unnatural Acts, and it was at this tiny theater off Broadway called the Classic Stage Company.
Okay.
And it's actually, we always used to joke that we were just doing a play behind a Starbucks, because there's a coffee shop in the lobby that's independent of the theater. So we'd be there, like, warming up or getting ready to go, and like there's a line out the door, and we're like, oh man, tons of people come to show night, but everyone just wants a latte.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really cool space. But this show was a period piece about a group of gay students at Harvard in the year 1920.
Okay.
And it's a completely true story that this theater company created based on found documents from the Harvard archives. It's this fascinating story about how the administrators at Harvard actually got together and put these young men on trial for being suspected homosexuals, and then expelled them and ruined their lives outside of school for being gay. And it was an experience that I will always remember because it took off. Like, the community really rallied behind the show.
Right.
And it also happened to be the same week of Gay Pride in New York that summer. And it was the same weekend, one of our shows went on the same weekend that they legalized gay marriage in New York for the first time, So it was such an amazing moment in history to be doing a show about young men who were persecuted for, loving who they loved, at the same time that for the first time ever, people in the state of New York were able to live their lives the way they wanted to.
That's a beautiful.
It also was, it was such an incredible moment. And it also checked those boxes of what we were just talking about, of a community, that I always thought that I would get. And it was the cast of guys in that show are still my best friends in New York to this day. And we all, have an epic group chat, and we all get together, go to a cabin in the summertime. So it's such a great community that I got out of that show. That was, what I always thought theater would be like. So that's definitely the one for me, for every other experience to beat.
That's amazing, man. Well, let's talk about some things that people might know you from. People have seen you on television. You mentioned Blue Bloods and the unique shooting schedule there. I see. I just go through your IMDb because I try to watch everything you're in. Like, I watched episodes of Personal Interest. I believe you were a bartender.
Oh yeah, great, man.
You play bartenders a lot, which I'd like to think that some way I influenced that.
Yeah, maybe. We'll talk about that off the podcast. But yeah, maybe.
Of course. A show you were on that I've never seen, but I know people watch. You did 2 episodes of Power.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that was really cool. I have this, for some reason, my track record of roles falls into the category of like guy with money who may have murdered someone.
I see that. Okay.
Like I get cast as like the asshole with a trust fund who is going to try and steal your girl and be mad when he doesn't get her or whatever. So, which is
part of me wants to like go back to high school, like, so how much are you channeling from this person? But we'll move on.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Name some names. But on Power, I got to play this guy. I think the character's name was Scott.
Scott, yes.
And it was like the first season of that show, and Amari Hardwick is running the club and trying to go straight as a former drug dealer. And my character is selling really bad cocaine in his nightclub, not realizing that it is a nightclub owned by the best cocaine dealer in New York.
Okay.
And somebody dies from overdosing from the stuff that I sold them. So the lead guy's goon has to track me down. And over the 2 episodes, they end up catching me and beating the crap out of me. But the craziest thing about that shoot was that they dressed me in like the best clothes, man. They put me in the budget for clothes on that show. I don't know what it is, but it's up there. They put me in head to toe Hugo Boss, like tailored perfectly for me. Yeah, like beautiful navy blue suit, like camel cashmere overcoat. And I was like, this stuff is amazing. Not realizing that in the second episode, they literally took me outside on the streets of the meatpacking district in March, had me roll around in the dirt and cover it in fake blood while we did the fight choreography. So we ruined this probably like $2,000 suit and like $4,000 overcoat. And I was talking to wardrobe and I was like, hey guys, why don't you just give me the dirty stuff?
That's okay.
And I'll see if I can get it dry cleaned, and I'll take care of the dry cleaning bill. Like, I'll just keep it. It didn't work, but that was my strategy.
You just always know if you don't ask, though.
Exactly. That's very true. Never hurts to ask.
Never hurts to ask. Well, that's actually really interesting. I didn't expect that story, but that's a great story. Let's talk now about your latest project, just hit Netflix, Game Over Man, with, I don't know if they have a group name, but I just call them the guys from Workaholics.
Yeah, that's really how people know them. It's Andre, Adam, and Blake, and those guys are amazing. They've got such a big following, and then there's also their fourth, the sort of unspoken
Kyle, yeah.
guy in their group is Kyle Newcheck, who's behind the camera on those projects. It was such a cool experience, man. They're such great guys, and it turned out pretty well. Like, I'm really happy with the final product.
It was so funny because I guess I kind of expected what you would expect going in to watch it, and then there's a dick on the floor. And I was like, oh, well, I don't know if I expected that.
Yeah, first 10 minutes of the movie. There's a lot of dick jokes in that movie.
Well, heavy dick joke movie, but it's also got a pretty amazing cast. Like Steve Howey, who's on Shameless. You've got Neil McDonough, who a lot of listeners on our network will know from Legends of Tomorrow. What was the vibe on set? Because it seems like these three guys, it being their project, just listening to interviews about it, other interviews I've listened to, them talking about it, it seemed like it was a pretty laid back set, and it was kind of just their project.
Oh, totally, man. I mean, it was produced by Scott Rudin and Netflix, and then Seth Rogen. And I think they just told these guys, like, we love what you do. We know that our audiences love what you do. Here's a check. Like, go have fun. And the bonus part of that is that Durs wrote a really great script. So those guys all came up with the story, but Anders was the one who sat down and actually typed it out. So it's well structured, it's smart, it's funny in the way that they're funny, and it's also got a ton of action. So everybody knew that what we were working on was good.
Right.
And those guys are really great about just sort of letting it fly. Like, they had 3 cameras rolling on every setup.
Oh, wow.
So the coverage that they got was insane.
They're almost shooting like a television show.
It really was like shooting a television show, but that way you can incorporate all the improv without being worried about missing something.
Without having to shoot coverage and say, do that improv again.
Yeah, exactly. So they've got, every angle covered as we're rolling, so they can chop it up at the end and see what they want to keep and what they want to throw out. But it was super laid back and, like, really exciting because people like Shaggy, who was in the movie,
who's not just in the movie, who is a core central figure in the movie.
Oh yeah. Like, Shaggy was the coolest, most professional dude on that set. He was there all night long. We were shooting overnights. We shot the whole thing in Vancouver, so we had to fly up to Vancouver for like a day. Be on set from like 6 p.m. to like 9 in the morning. And he literally sang It Wasn't Me from beginning to end like 9 times. Even when we were just rehearsing, they were like, okay, Shaggy, this is just a rehearsal. Like, we're not going to roll.
This is where you would sing.
Yeah. And then he just sang the whole thing. And the background artists were so excited. He basically gave a free concert for all the extras who were sitting in the cold in Vancouver all night. But he was funny, man. He's actually really funny in that movie.
So what's your role in the movie?
So I play one of the goons. Yet again, I am one of the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
I play a goon named Alan. And he's sort of like, he's sort of like the well-intentioned, like, goon who keeps messing things up. And there was a subplot at one point that I was actually the nephew of the head bad guy, and that's why I got the job, but that didn't make it in the movie.
Cutting room floor.
Yeah, cutting room floor. You'll hear it here first, only on the UD pod.
There you go.
But it's so I play a guy who's really holding a gun on people most of the movie, but I get a couple of really nice little bits where I mess up a bomb, and then I mess up flying a helicopter. So I get a couple of nice moments to shine.
All right, so smarmy guy who steals your girl with money, you're able to draw on like most of our high school. So
yep, exactly.
I gotta ask, role like this, Roe Hartrampf holding a gun, and or Roe Hartrampf cocaine dealer. Where do you draw from on those things? Because I know you and I love you like a brother. You are not a cocaine dealer, and I'm not sure you've ever held a real gun.
I've held a real gun in my time.
Okay, I didn't assume. I just want to ask. Okay.
Yeah. I think luckily with both of these roles, I'm not supposed to be very good at either of those things. So it's really more about the confidence that a white collar guy who would steal your girl has in his own powers to achieve these goals of holding a gun and selling cocaine.
Fair enough.
And then inevitably I get caught out and it doesn't go well.
Well, that's great, man. Well, congratulations
Yeah.
on. Oh, actually, I have two more questions. Sorry. Second
great.
question. So, what's it like to shoot this thing and then have it sit? Because we talked about the immediacy of theater and television for its foibles is fairly. You're shooting and you're going to see it within a month or two. This is something when did you finish? When did wrap on this happen?
I wrapped out before production was fully done, but I was done in probably June of last year.
So that's wild because if you finished in June of last year, it dropped in March.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling myself this press, but doing press for something like that, you've got to like call on emotions or think about things that happened last June. What was I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously it's different than I was going to work and doing my job, but like you were going to work and doing your job. Is it hard to try to reformulate or recapture kind of those moments, or is it just such a unique experience that at least for this first big spot in a bigger production, it's going to stick with you?
Yeah, I think because it was such a unique experience, man. Like, and the whole thing from beginning to end was really special for me. Like, the way that it worked out was sort of funny. Like I was in LA last February for pilot season, and I was lucky to get to screen test for Anders and Mindy Kaling's new show on NBC called Champions, where I was actually auditioning to play Anders' brother on the show. And I got a couple of chemistry reads with Anders. We hit it off. We had some good improv, with each other, some good chemistry. And spoiler alert, I didn't get that job. But Durs and I got along, and so he told me later that he thought of me for Game Over Man right away. And so after I came back to New York after pilot season, I got an email with the script and the role, took a look, made a tape, sent it off, and the guys were really excited about the tape and my take on this, sort of secondary role. And they, flew me out to Vancouver. So it's something that's really stuck with me because it's one of those projects that sort of comes together in this really great way that you don't expect.
Right.
Because I was really bummed when I didn't get that TV show, like anyone would be. But something really awesome. Usually in this business, there's no consolation prize. Right. You don't get that TV show and you go back to bartending. But luckily in this case, I got a little pat on the back and like a little, second place ribbon of getting to go work on this movie. That was really an experience I've never had before. So I think it's something that'll stick with me for sure.
I think it's cool because especially your industry and the one Matt's in, rejection is just something you deal with on a second by second basis.
It's constant, man.
And to be reaffirmed in that way by someone who you respect in the field, that's got to feel really good. And I think it's important that it's important that even like once in a while you see that maybe you don't land the meeting that you're in the room for, but you've impressed someone in that room, and they've got you for something in the future. And I think that's really important because you see people who say, "Oh, I'll never like." We ended up moving to Philadelphia because I made Susan take a job interview she said she could never get, and I was like, "Well, maybe I'll impress someone." And lo and behold, I'm the idiot because she got the job and I lived in the cold for 2 more years. So that's on me. But I think it's nice that you were able to parlay what some people say is a step down or a failure into a really cool success and a really cool story and a very cool movie.
Yeah, it was really a dream come true, honestly. Like it couldn't have gone better for me.
Well, lastly, before we get out of here, I know you and I talked offline about some things that are coming down the pike. What can you share that you've got kind of on the back burner or something you're excited about in the future?
Yeah, I think it's just back to the audition hustle, man. Like, again, like we said, there's no consolation prize. And because I worked on this amazing movie last year, there's not, a line, straight line to the next job always.
Right.
So I'm reading some scripts right now that I'm really excited about. And there's a couple of things in the pipeline that I'm right for. but it's just about keeping on the hustle, keeping on the grind, like staying sharp and working my butt off. So there's some stuff that I'm excited about that I can't detail fully.
Yeah.
But I'm in a really cool position, and I think that having this showcase of Game Over Man right now is sort of raising my exposure in a really great way.
Well, Roban, thanks for coming on. Game Over Man is available on Netflix streaming right now. Check it out. It's a very funny movie. Very, I didn't know they could do action. And part of me was like,
right?
Part of me, they said to Netflix, like, let us do an action movie. Netflix cut them a check. But obviously I know it's more complicated than that. But it feels like the product feels like it was one of those things that just feels unfiltered. Like, this is clearly them. If you liked Workaholics, if you liked their brand of comedy, you're going to enjoy this movie. I advise everyone to give it a shot. The last thing I'm going to ask you, stage names are fine. It's such a proud German name. It's just such a good name.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, one day, maybe you should just say, when you enter your like dramatic phase, when you're just doing like period piece movies, when you go full Daniel Day-Lewis, I expect to see the return of Roaring. That's all I'm saying.
It's all right. Noted, man, for sure.
All right, there. My vote has been counted. That has been Dope Talk, episode 4. Talking to Roe Hartrampf, actor. In my mind, is always a singer first, but he is an amazing actor. Check him out, Game Over Man, Netflix right now, and we'll be back next time.